At the University of Regina, the Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Digital Resource Hub showcases impactful EDI initiatives across the campus.
It's a centralized, accessible resource for our community and post-secondary institutions nationally.
Join us to hear the stories behind the initiatives shaping our campus.
So currently, one of the things that we have been doing with respect to EDI is trying to address some gender inequity in the faculty ranks. And so what we did actually in the last academic year, where we had 8 academic staff searches going on, ranging from laboratory instructor through to Canada Research Chair. For the positions that were in the faculty ranks, we targeted the advertisements to applicants who self-identify as woman, which really means that if a person did not self-declare themselves to be a woman at the time of application, then their application wasn't considered. And we did that primarily to address gender inequity in that academic staff category. And we weren't always successful in hiring candidates, and not because the candidates were not sufficiently large in number. In fact, we had absolutely outstanding candidates, but it's a very competitive world to hire faculty members right now. And so some of our successes didn't lead to hires, but that was something that we were very purposeful about in doing this past academic year. It remains, in fact, a priority, even though we're not doing targeted searches to applicants who identify as women. And in fact, we hired 2 people in open competition who are women. So that happens, and but we wanted to really be purposeful and take a select group of positions and try to fill them with women. So that's been a priority. And then we will continue to do similar sorts of things through our regular faculty hires in the coming years. One thing we always really do is try to identify in the top pool of candidates, are there any that fit into our sort of targets so that we have a workforce that reflects our community. So that's maybe the biggest priority. A second one has always been an ongoing one. It's always been a priority, and that's to try to create a truly inclusive work and learning environment in the Faculty of Science. We have done something that's a little bit innovative. There are institutional supports for those types of resources, but we wanted to have something a little bit more focused on the Faculty of Science. So we have been running for a few years something called learning lunches, and we run them in the fall and the winter semester, and they're held once a month. People come and get a free lunch, but we also have a speaker or a panel of speakers, and we've used a number of our learning lunches to address EDI issues. For example, in one of them, we had 3 of our prominent researchers explain to everyone else who attended the lunch their strategies for building diverse and inclusive research teams. And at another one, we had some of the leading EDI advocates across campus speak to us on even simple things like the use of gender pronouns and that sort of thing. And talking about these things at the learning lunch normalize them to a certain extent, but also gives people an opportunity to ask questions that they might be embarrassed to ask in other fora. So those are some resources that we use specific to our faculty, and they've been quite successful and welcomed. So we don't have, for example, an associate dean with an EDI portfolio. We don't have a committee of academic staff members with an EDI portfolio, but EDI is sort of woven into the shared responsibility of the dean and associate deans. And for a time, until recently, because we had sort of a downsizing of the number of associate deans we have, for a time, so I'd say for the previous 4 years, in fact, one of the associate deans was primarily responsible for oversight of EDI activities in the faculty, among other duties. But now that's become a shared responsibility of the dean and 2 associate deans. And then it's really embraced by all sectors of our faculty. So I'd like to just read for you a number of the things that we have. So there is a faculty member who is providing us with LGBTQ2S+ leadership through workshops, lectures, and just by living an example herself. We have one of our prominent environmental scientists deeply involved in advocacy for Indigenous issues. He's not alone, but he is one of our leaders, and our most recent Tier 1 Canada Research Chair is also actively involved in working with Indigenous communities on issues of shared concern regarding water. One of my associate deans, along with some other people in the Faculty of Science, has been providing leadership on doing science camps directed to Saskatchewan Indigenous youth. 2 of our faculty members are leading what's called URYs, so that's University of Regina Women in Science and Engineering. And the president of the University of Regina Faculty Association is one of our members, and she often brings a lens of diversity and equity to IRFA activities, but that spills over into everything we do in science. And then I'll finally mention that one of our professors, Samira Sadoui in the Department of Computer Science, some of her research is actually applied to identify hate speech that appears on the internet. So that it's just part of our everyday fabric. So I think there's a number of things. So all of those things that I mentioned have been impactful. So where there once was not a science camp for Saskatchewan Indigenous youth, there is now. Where there was once not a scientist who could be a resource for Indigenous communities on issues related to water, there is now. So I think all of those things I mentioned have had an impact with positive outcomes. Gwen Grenier, who's been providing a lot of leadership for us, has created opportunities, not just for people on campus, but she's done something called STEM for All, which has brought people from the city of Regina, like from pre-university age to campus, people that might not fit in. And so it's tried to be as inclusive, STEM for all, and to find people, like-minded people here on campus where they could do activities. So they have pizza, they do some experiments in labs, there's all sorts of things that happen. that wouldn't have happened before without her leadership. So because these are kind of ingrained in our annual activities in the faculty, the positive outcomes are sort of there, happening incrementally and all the time. Yeah, I think for me the biggest challenge is to really create a truly inclusive environment. Despite everything that we do, I still observe that not all voices are heard, not all faces are seen. Some people feel more comfortable than others speaking out, or presenting an idea, or creating an initiative on their own. And so I don't think it's entirely due to a lack of feeling safe, but I think there's room for improvement there, where those voices should be heard, those faces should be seen, and we'll all be better for that if it happens. So for me, that's maybe the biggest challenge. It's an ongoing challenge in the Faculty of Science. For the institution itself, I think, we've worked hard making diversity sort of a normal thing, and it's clear it has really enriched us. But I still think there's work to be done. I'd like to see more intermingling of groups, not just groups. So, for example, if I'm at an international conference, I don't want to be hanging out with everybody who's just from Canada. It should be intermingling with the international community. So I do still see clusters of people hanging together. So I think we could do more. We have done a lot to have a diverse campus, but I'd like to see it more interwoven. I guess that's one thing of saying. I still think at the leadership level, be it department heads, deans, associate vice presidents, president, we could have a more diverse group of leaders. So again, that just depends on who's available and interested in doing leadership work. It doesn't come easily, and but I think in that regard, the university itself could grow and should grow and will grow. I have no doubt about that, to be honest. I have no doubt about that. It's just whether you can get people to apply for these jobs and be successful in hiring them. The diversity of our world is definitely a strength of it. It's the fact that we don't all look the same, we don't all speak the same language, is a strength. It's not a weakness. It's something to embrace and love, not to fear. So let's not fight with each other. Let's accept each other and celebrate each other. We are beautiful. Everyone is beautiful.